Hello, I'm Dr. Tara Cortez, President and CEO of Lighthouse International. I'm delighted to welcome you to the video portion of Living Better at Home, a guide for people with vision loss. Lighthouse International is dedicated to helping people of all ages overcome the challenges of vision loss to enjoy safe and independent lives. We help the youngest of children in our preschool to older adults through our geriatric services. This video is designed to give you a sense of what we do. You'll see Sid and Kathleen, Lighthouse Vision Rehabilitation Specialists, demonstrate helpful techniques that you can use in your very own kitchen. These practical adaptations are intended to get you started, but they don't take the place of the specialized services provided by Vision Rehabilitation Specialists. At the end of the video, I'll tell you how you can find services near you. And now, to living better at home.
Kathleen, I'm so happy to have you here with me in my kitchen.
Thank you, Sid. Let me begin by telling you what a vision rehabilitation therapist does. I work with people who have low vision and no vision. I teach them different techniques and I show them different devices that can help them to do things more easily with their vision impairment. And this way, they can regain the independence that they once had.
You spend a lot of time in other people's kitchens, so let's take a look around mine.
Okay, great. When we go into people's homes, it's very important to see how much light they're going to need. Everyone is an individual. So for some people, all this light would be great for doing different tasks. And for others, this might be too much light, and having a dimmer would be great to turn down the light, because sometimes there might be too much glare. The under the cabinet lighting is a great thing. We call that task lighting. For someone that might be cutting a vegetable or measuring out ingredients, they can work in this area and have the light focus on what they're doing.
Well, now let me show you another light that I have in my kitchen, which is over the stove. I can either have a bright light or I can have a dim light. But the stove may cause some problems for some people because it's a digital stove. How do you work with that?
Well, on these newer stoves that don't have dials, the people aren't able to read this flat panel, and they're also not able to feel anything that may distinguish, which is baked, which is broiled. What we can do for that is we use what we call touch dots. And these are just two examples of them, but they come in many different colors. And I would put them onto this flat panel. Probably maybe on bake and maybe on the arrows for up and down, depending on whatever the person needed.
One thing good about this stove is that it does have good contrast with the counter. Well, I've got all my baking supplies. I took it out of the closet. I keep them all just kind of thrown together in this box, so when I want to bake, I just take the whole thing out of the closet.
And this way, everything is right at your fingertips.
But I still am not sure how I'd be able to tell one box of sugar from another.
If you're just going to have these two types of sugar, you might want to put a rubber band on the brown sugar, and that's how you're going to distinguish that this is the brown, and then the white doesn't have a rubber band on it. You can also make a label, a large print label. Some people may write it right on the box, but sometimes that's overpowered by the other things that's written on it, so you might want to make a label. And then you can attach it very simply by using a rubber band.
Well, that's easy enough. And what about, would I also maybe label all these other things, the baking soda, the baking powder?
Well, you could actually mark these again with a handwritten label, or you could put a big P on top of this container for baking powder, or some people will be able to differentiate it by the shape. This is a circle for the powder and a square for the soda. Placing these items into a tray, it just makes it easier. The tray has a boundary and things won't go to different sides of the counter, and you'll spend less time looking for things and more time making what you're here to make. Sid has her salt in a large salt shaker, which makes it very easy because some people will obviously have it in the little canister, and it's easier to scoop than to actually pour the salt onto this spoon. What I teach people to do is to run their finger across to make sure that it's even. The other thing that they could use is a knife, a butter knife, and to scrape it across. These measuring cups have been marked with a raised substance that we call Highmark. that goes on goes on wet and then dries. So there's 4 for 1/4, and then for an example, there's 1 for 1 cup. What people with low vision can do, if they can't see visually, they can put their finger into the side of the cup. So that way when the sugar starts to come up to their finger, they know they're getting close to the top. So what you're going to do is then shake it out a little and then rub your finger across and see if you have enough. And you might need a little bit more. And you're going to go across. And then you have a level amount and you're going to pour it in. What Sid, under my direction, has done is taken the vinegar and placed it in a jar, probably it was an old jelly jar or something. And these are measuring spoons, and as you can see, they're bent. What you're going to do instead of pouring is you're going to be able to put the spoon in like we did for the salt and lift out, and then you're going to bring it over and pour it in. When people are mixing, we tell them to go around the edge, and that way they can tell that they're getting the whole thing mixed. The first thing that you need is oven mitts. They go all the way up to your elbow, which protects your whole forearm, and that way you shouldn't get burned. Right. Yeah. The next thing is to locate the oven door, and you're going to do this. If you have some vision, you might be able to just see it visually. Some people might need it marked with tape for contrast, and then others will need to do it tactually. So the way you do it tactually is along the edge of the stove, you'd slide your hand down until you came to the door.
Okay, oh, and there it is.
Right.
Right.
So you can open the oven door, and what you're going to do is then you're going to find the oven rack, and you're going to do it the same way that as you found the handle.
So just slide down, and,
right.
Oh, and then you hit it.
Right, and then you're going to slide out your oven rack,
okay.
and then you're going to place your cake onto the oven rack. Now, to know where you're putting it, you might want to start at the edge and then slide it in a little bit.
Start at the edge, and then just slide it.
Okay. So that's not hanging off or too...
Right.
And then you're going to close, you're going to put the rack back in, and you're going to close the oven door.
All right.
And most people are not going to be able to read their stovetop timer or their small kitchen timer. So what we have is an example of a large number timer. Okay?
Okay.
And this happens to be one that has, it's white with black numbers. This is the same one, but this has been marked with little dots in increments of 5.
Right, I can
so
feel
that someone can, if they can't see it, they can do it tactually. And I think we have to cook this cake for about 25 minutes.
Correct.
Okay, so we're going to set our timer to 25, and we're ready to go.
Okay.
The first thing that you should know when you're going to use the stove is that you should make sure that there's nothing on the edge hanging over the stove or on top of the stove. So some people are able to do this visually, and other people may require to do it tactually. The next thing that you would have to do is center your pot, whether it be a pot, a pan, and we're going to use a kettle. With Sid's stove, she doesn't have defined burners, so it makes it a little more difficult, but not impossible. And this is a good example of how everybody's stove is different. And when you have the teacher come out to see you in your home, the teacher would be able to show you how best to center a pot on your individual stove. So with Sid's stove, each burner has a little triangle indentation. And you can put the pot in between those, and then you check top and bottom to make sure it's on there. The reason that we center the pot is, one, we like to have the pot on the stove before we ignite the flame, just for safety. 2, that when we ignite the flame, that the flame doesn't shoot up, the pot is going to protect us. And 3, having the pot too forward could have the pot spill over. The next thing is igniting the flame. So if I light Sid's stove, it clicks, and then it's going to poof, and then you have the high flame.
The person might
By
just be able to
sound.
do that by sound alone.
Right. But it depends on each person, and that's why it's important to have a professional come out and work with you on how to use the stove safely.
I see that we have the lemon set up here on 2 different cutting boards.
That brings us to contrast when we're cutting. So when we're using something that's a light color, like a potato or an apple peeled, we would use the black cutting board. It doesn't necessarily have to be black. It can be a dark colored cutting board, whatever works for the person as far as contrast. There are many different cutting techniques for different foods. Again, I'm going to say that it's very important to have a professional come and teach you the proper techniques, because this, again, is a safety thing so that you don't want to cut yourself. But I'm going to give you a quick overview of how to cut a lemon. We have a small steak knife. It's easier when you're cutting, when you have low vision, to have a smaller knife.
Okay.
Also, this knife is serrated, which is helpful. And how do you think that you tell the blade on that? You can tell by the handle in some cases, and on that handle, there's a point on the one side where the blade is.
Right, I can feel like a
Right.
little notch.
Right, where your hand sits in it nicely.
Right.
And the other way is to rub the blade or either side against the edge of the cutting board.
Okay, that side I feel is serrated.
Right.
And that side is definitely smooth.
Right.
I can feel that.
Hold the lemon in one hand,
Uh-huh.
and you're going to bring the knife next to the lemon,
Okay.
and then you're going to slide the knife up the lemon until you think that you're about in the middle. You can use the finger from this hand to feel, and when you think you're about in the area that you want to be, you're going to put your hand over the lemon,
Okay.
and you're holding it on both sides so that the knife is in between your
Right. I
hands.
feel like that gives
And-
me a good steady
Right. You
hold.
have a steady hold, and then you're going
That
to cut
kind of
down.
holds it nice and secure.
Right.
My fingers are out of the way.
Right. And then you cut down the middle.
Okay.
And you'd have two halves.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
And if you want to quarter them, do the same technique. When you're pouring water, which is probably one of the hardest things to pour, because no matter what cup you use, you're not going to have contrast. So we have this wonderful little gadget called a liquid level indicator. And it has a 9-volt battery and 2 little prongs. And what you do with it is you take the liquid level indicator and you hang the prongs over the side of the cup with the battery outside the cup. So I'm going to take the tea kettle and put the lip of the spout next to the cup, and then I'm going to begin to pour. And there you have it. It beeps. And that lets me know that the cup is almost full. Sid, the cake really looks great.
It does, Kathleen, and I thank you so much. You've demonstrated lots of useful techniques.
I hope you found this video helpful. We have even more in store for you here online. Lessons that will take you step by step through the techniques that Sid and Kathy demonstrated. So click on the lesson link to get started. Keep in mind that these lessons are not a substitute for the services provided by vision rehabilitation specialists. If you live in the greater New York area, call Lighthouse International at 800-829-0500 to set up an appointment with a Lighthouse specialist today. To locate services in your community, click on the Help Near You icon on our homepage. Finally, a word of thanks. This video is made available through an unrestricted educational grant from Genentech, and thank you for watching.